What if the most famous war in history never happened the way we believe? What if the world's greatest legend hides a far darker reality beneath it? For thousands of years, humanity has believed a story that seems almost perfect. A city burned, thousands of warriors died, and mighty kingdoms ultimately collapsed. According to legend, it all began because of a woman named Helen. But could a massive war truly begin because of love alone? Or was that story merely a beautiful mask hiding the real reason? A reason far crueler, more political, and far more human in nature. Because history often hides its true face behind captivating stories. Behind the legend of Troy lies a question still unanswered today. Did Achilles truly exist, or was he simply created by ancient poets? Did Helen ever live, or was she born from imagination alone? And most astonishing of all, did the Trojan War really happen? That question has haunted historians, archaeologists, and scholars for centuries. The answer is far less simple than many people expect. Because the deeper history is explored, the blurrier truth becomes. What researchers find is not certainty, but an even greater mystery. And at the center of that mystery stands a city called Troy. A city said to have sparked one of the ancient world's greatest wars. A city that may be real, mythical, or somehow both at once. To understand the truth, we must travel back over 3,000 years. Back to a time when gods, men, and myths lived side by side. A time when a single decision could destroy entire civilizations. And it all began in a wealthy city controlling the world's trade routes. More than 3,000 years ago, Troy stood proudly beside the sea. It was not the largest kingdom, but its wealth attracted endless envy. Its location was vital between the ancient worlds of Asia and Europe. Merchant ships had to pass through territories influenced by Troy. Gold, copper, spices, and luxury goods flowed through its markets daily. Troy's wealth grew steadily while neighboring powers watched carefully. Throughout history, wealth has often been both blessing and curse. Because when one nation gains too much, others begin wanting it. And Troy seemed to possess everything worth fighting over. Then came the story that would survive thousands of years. A story about a Trojan prince named Paris, and a woman named Helen, said to be the world's most beautiful queen. According to legend, Paris met Helen and instantly fell in love. Some versions claim Helen willingly left her former life behind. Others insist she was abducted and taken to Troy. No one truly knows what happened between them anymore. But one thing is certain, Helen's husband refused to accept it. King Menelaus felt publicly humiliated before the Greek world. What began as a personal insult slowly became a political crisis. Greek rulers gathered together to discuss a united response. One kingdom after another joined an increasingly dangerous alliance. Perhaps not only for Helen, but for something much greater. Something far more valuable than returning a queen to Sparta. And from that moment, the road toward war slowly began opening. Soon, the Greek world began moving toward a massive conflict. Kings from distant regions sent armies to attack Troy together. A giant fleet was assembled unlike anything seen before. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of ships crowded the coastline. The sea became a pathway leading directly toward destruction. The warriors believed victory would come quickly and easily. But war rarely follows the hopes people place upon it. When the Greeks arrived, Troy remained strong and defiant. Its walls were immense, its defenses formidable, and its spirit unbroken. The first attacks began with confidence that victory was near. Yet Troy proved far harder to conquer than anyone expected. Days became weeks, and weeks became years of suffering. Military camps spread around the city like wounds refusing to heal. Thousands lived under constant tension and uncertainty every day. Each morning brought hope, and each night brought death. Troy's mighty walls continued resisting attack after attack. The city seemed determined never to surrender. Meanwhile, the Greeks slowly began losing patience. Supplies dwindled, morale weakened, and casualties continued rising. Many warriors wondered whether the war was still worth fighting. Yet after so much sacrifice, retreat felt impossible. The greater the cost, the harder it becomes to quit. What should have been a short campaign became a nightmare. And amid that nightmare, heroes emerged who would become legends. From the blood-soaked battlefield emerged names remembered throughout history. Achilles, the Greek warrior said to be nearly invincible in battle, his reputation alone terrified enemies before the fighting even began. Yet behind his legendary image, Achilles carried a heavy burden. He knew that ultimate glory would lead him toward an early death. But for Achilles, being forgotten was worse than dying. On the opposite side stood Hector, Troy's greatest defender. Hector did not fight for fame, fortune, or everlasting glory. He fought for his family, his city, and the people he loved. That devotion made Hector far more dangerous than many realized. There is no force stronger than someone protecting their own home. Whenever Hector entered battle, Troy's spirit seemed to rise again. Year after year passed without any sign that the war would end. Both sides continued fighting as casualties mounted relentlessly. Blood soaked the earth while hope slowly faded from both armies. Many soldiers barely remembered life before the war began. Children grew up knowing only weapons, battles, and fear. War had become an ordinary part of daily existence. Yet history often changes because of a meeting between two individuals. And fate was slowly bringing Achilles and Hector together. A meeting that would alter the course of the war forever. A confrontation destined to become one of history's greatest stories. When legends collide, entire worlds can change forever. And at last, that long-awaited day finally arrived. Outside the walls of Troy, two legendary figures finally stood face to face. Achilles and Hector both understood only one would survive. Thousands watched a duel that seemed larger than the war itself. No sound remained except footsteps and the clash of weapons. Even the wind seemed to pause and witness their confrontation. Hector understood exactly what was at stake that day. If he fell, Troy would lose its greatest protector. If he prevailed, hope might return to his people. The duel was fierce, displaying extraordinary courage and skill. Yet legend tells us Achilles ultimately defeated Hector in combat. And with Hector's death, something inside Troy began to break. Not its walls or gates, but the spirit of its people. Grief spread throughout the city like an unavoidable shadow. Many began sensing that the end was drawing near. Hector had been more than a warrior, he was living hope. Without him, Troy's future seemed darker than ever before. Yet surprisingly, the city still refused to fall. Day after day passed, and Troy remained standing. Its mighty walls continued resisting repeated assaults. Desperation began growing among the exhausted Greek forces. They had sacrificed too much time, effort, and countless lives. The longer the conflict continued, the more distant victory appeared. That was when the Greek leaders began considering another path. A path built not on strength, but on something far more dangerous. After years of failure, the Greek leaders were slowly losing all hope. They realized strength alone might never be enough to win this war. Then came an idea that would become one of history's greatest legends. A plan relying neither on swords, spears, nor overwhelming military force. A plan built upon humanity's most dangerous weakness of all. The desire to believe suffering has finally come to an end. According to legend, the Greeks built a gigantic wooden horse. Not merely a symbol, but a vessel hiding a deadly secret within. Selected warriors secretly concealed themselves inside the horse's hollow body. Afterward, the Greek fleet appeared to sail away into the distance. From the city walls, the Trojans watched their enemies seemingly disappear. 10 years of suffering finally seemed ready to end at last. Celebrations erupted throughout a city long trapped in endless warfare. People began believing victory had finally become entirely theirs. Yet victory is often the most dangerous moment of all, because joy can blind people to the warnings standing before them. The giant wooden horse was then pulled through Troy's massive gates. Some warned of danger, but their voices were drowned by celebration. When people desperately want to believe, logic often loses the battle. That night, Troy overflowed with music, laughter, food, and relief. For the first time in years, they truly felt safe again. Guards grew careless, and vigilance slowly faded from the city. No one realized destruction was already waiting inside their walls. And as darkness deepened, Troy's fate quietly began to unfold. The city of Troy slept, believing the war had finally come to an end. The sounds of celebration slowly faded as night covered the quiet streets. In the center of the city stood the giant wooden horse of victory. Yet within that darkness, a few pairs of eyes slowly opened. The hidden Greek warriors waited patiently for the perfect moment to act. They needed neither a large army nor another brutal assault. They needed only one perfect opportunity to change history forever. Their footsteps were silent, but the fate of a city followed them. Their first target was neither the palace nor Troy's weapons stores. Instead, they moved toward the gates that had resisted years of attacks. Within minutes, those mighty gates were opened from the inside, and beyond them, the Greek fleet had never truly left at all. Their ships returned beneath the cover of darkness and silence. Thousands of warriors entered the city before most citizens awoke. What happened next became one of history's most famous stories. Flames began consuming homes while screams echoed through the streets. Families ran in terror, desperately searching for loved ones amid chaos. Soldiers fought blindly in the darkness, unsure who still survived. Buildings collapsed, temples burned, and panic swallowed the city whole. Troy, which had endured 10 years of war, fell in one night. Not because its walls were weak or its warriors lacked courage, but because they trusted something they should have questioned from the beginning. The story became a timeless warning about hidden dangers behind victories. Yet this is precisely where the greatest mystery truly begins. For centuries, many people believed the Trojan War was nothing more than a myth, a tale invented by poets to entertain generations across the ages. Achilles, Hector, and Helen were considered figures of pure legend. Then, in the 19th century, something remarkable began to happen. A man named Heinrich Schliemann became obsessed with finding the lost city of Troy. Many scholars mocked his efforts and dismissed them as a waste of time. Yet Schliemann believed great legends often contain fragments of truth. He followed clues hidden within the ancient writings of Homer. His search eventually led him to a hill called Hisarlik in modern Turkey. There, something extraordinary slowly emerged from beneath the earth. Massive walls, ancient ruins, and layers of forgotten civilizations appeared. The discovery shocked a world that had doubted Troy's existence. A great city had indeed once stood in that very location. Even more surprising, the site showed evidence of violent destruction. Traces of fire and conflict were found within several archaeological layers. Suddenly, people began wondering whether the legend held hidden truths. Yet the discoveries only created even more unanswered questions. Yes, Troy may have been real, but what about the famous war? No direct evidence has ever confirmed the existence of Achilles. No definitive proof has been found for Helen either. Even the legendary wooden horse remains unsupported by strong evidence. The more evidence emerged, the blurrier the line became. Fact and myth seemed increasingly impossible to separate completely. And that is where the true twist of this story begins. What if the Trojan War was neither entirely fact nor entirely legend? What if both sides of the argument are partially correct? That possibility is now considered by many modern historians. They believe a major conflict likely occurred near Troy long ago, but its causes may have differed greatly from the famous legend. Perhaps it was not fought for love, but for power and trade. Troy controlled one of the most valuable trade routes of the age. Whoever controlled Troy could influence the flow of wealth and goods. And throughout history, such advantages have often sparked wars. Far more often than romantic tales would have us believe. If a war truly occurred, it may have been surprisingly ordinary. No demigods, no divine destinies, no supernatural interventions. Only human beings driven by ambition, fear, and competing interests. Yet humanity has a fascinating habit when remembering the past. We rarely pass history down exactly as it happened. We add meaning, symbols, heroes, and unforgettable dramatic moments. Slowly, history transforms into a story easier to remember. A story more emotional, more heroic, and more inspiring. Perhaps Achilles represents many great warriors combined into one figure. Perhaps Helen became a symbol for deeper and hidden motives. Perhaps the Trojan horse was a metaphor for military deception. The more we examine it, the harder certainty becomes. Fact and legend have been intertwined for over 3,000 years. And the final answer may be stranger than anyone expects. After all the discoveries, one great question still remains unanswered. Did the Trojan War truly happen exactly as the stories describe? Perhaps the answer is neither a simple yes nor a simple no. History rarely presents itself in such straightforward ways. What we have is evidence of a real city destroyed long ago. What we also have is a legend that survived the fall of empires. Between those two realities lies a space filled with uncertainty. And within that uncertainty, the Trojan War continues to live. Not as pure fact and not as complete fiction either, but as a remarkable meeting point between history and imagination. Yet here comes the greatest twist of all. Maybe proving the story true was never the most important goal. Maybe what matters most is why people keep telling it. For thousands of years, generation after generation has remembered Troy, even while countless other kingdoms vanished into complete obscurity. Troy lost the war, but it won something far greater. It achieved a kind of immortality within human memory. Its walls fell, but its story never truly collapsed. Achilles may not have been real, yet his courage still inspires. Hector may be legendary, yet his sacrifice still moves hearts. Helen may be mythical, yet her story continues sparking curiosity. And perhaps that is the greatest power any legend can possess. Legends can outlive stone, iron, kingdoms, and even entire civilizations. Troy may have burned long ago, but Troy never truly died.